Welcome to part 2 of my latest video series, which began with part 1 reviewing this $350 HP computer. It's really they'd like to say it's a $329 computer, and then they give you a $10 discount, so it's $319, and then they add $30 for shipping, and then it comes out to, it was actually more than $30 for shipping. It comes out to a little over $350. That's the bottom line. And the contest here is, can we build a better computer for less money? Is it cheaper to build your own, or is it cheaper to buy pre-built? Now, what we learned in part 1 is that, well, if you haven't seen part 1, there's a link to it in the video notes below. If you look just below the video, you'll see a little bit of text that says show more. Click on that, because all the information for most of the questions people ask is already in there. And it doesn't matter if you've got a smartphone or a tablet, it shows up the same, okay? So I've had people say, well, I can't see that because I'm on an iPhone. No, if you can't see it because you're on an iPhone, then like myself, you need glasses. Some people have asked about the glasses. This is a result of getting older. I'm having a difficult time reading small text, and the fonts keep getting smaller and smaller. And I talked to an optometrist about it, and they said at about the age of about 42, for most people, the lens in your eye, the way he described it to me, works kind of like this. And as you age, like other muscles in your body, it becomes less flexible. And what would happen is I was starting to have difficulty like reading a Tylenol bottle, you know, what the dosage was. I'd be holding it kind of like this and kind of looking at it funny. And so they checked my eyes, and they found out that basically I didn't want glasses that hang on a string just for reading, because that would make me feel really old. That's my own personal issue. If you wear glasses on a string, don't take offense to that. I don't want that look. So I wanted glasses I could wear all the time. And they found that, they said that my distance vision was slightly off, although I don't see any difference in distance. So what I ended up getting was a pair of glasses. They're called progressive lenses. They're like, kind of like trifocals, where the bottom of the glasses are, they magnify. They're like a magnifying lens, and I can read small print. And the middle is like for the computer screen, that makes it more comfortable. And then the top part would be for like driving, although I never wear them for driving. It's too bright outside in Arizona. You know, they make these so they auto tint and everything, but it's $600 for a pair of prescription progressive glass lenses with Oakley frames. I was about done spending money when I've never worn glasses in my life. So I don't know, what do you think? Do I look like Scarecrow from Batman? That's all I can think of when I see myself with them on. Hopefully I look a little smarter, right? And I was surprised nobody has yet mentioned the hoop in my ear. I pierced my ear myself. Not that I recommend anybody do it. When I was about 15 years old in 1983 or whatever it was. And I haven't worn anything in it in a long time, and my wife thinks it's a middle-age crisis. Whatever. I like the look. All right, so there we go. Can we move past that now and get back to? Can we focus? There's a lot of ADD out there, I think, or ADHD, and I start looking at the comments on the video, and I'm like, what has any of this got to do with an HP reviewer building a computer? But so many people ask. I just wanted to get it out of the way, and let's get to business. So here we've already reviewed this. As I mentioned, the link, if you missed that review, it's, if I don't say so myself, pretty funny, but it's all true, is available for you to watch and catch up with where we're at. This is everything that we got for $350. This is the computer. This is the power supply. This computer has no internal power supply. Mouse and keyboard, which they advertise as having volume controls, which means there's a mute button here, a volume up, a volume down. Other than that, it's a pretty standard keyboard. There's a sleep button. I don't know why anybody would need the sleep button, but it's a very inexpensive keyboard, very inexpensive mouse. And so they just get the basics done. I'm slightly amused they don't include speakers, because they could have included a set of $5 speakers. They promote how the keyboard has volume control buttons for speakers, but they don't give you any speakers. But they do give you the keyboard. Apparently, they think you're probably already set with speakers, but And apparently you've already got a monitor, because that's not included either. Maybe they assume your keyboard and mouse are the old PS2 style, and since this motherboard only accepts USB, maybe that's their logic. We'll give them USB. And any speakers from any era will work. Any PC speakers will work. So the plug-in design of speakers for PCs hasn't changed. So I don't know what the logic is. I'm just putting it out there. Okay, so to make something equivalent to this, can we make it for less? The answer is yes, and we can get more for our money. So I went online, I did a little research, and I found a cheap case and power supply. Now, I've never used this case before. I have no idea what the quality of it is. I can't imagine anything's going to be any worse than what we're seeing here with this HP as far as quality goes. I mean, it's very, very poor quality. So that's my opinion. We pull out the knife. Again, I do everything honestly. Nothing's been pre-set up. I don't know what to expect when I open this box. If we have any damaged parts or DOA parts, you will see that live on camera. It will not be edited out. I will say that I haven't received any DOA, that means dead on arrival. I haven't received any dead on arrival parts in many, many years, and I build a lot of computers. Now, I primarily order from Newegg and from Amazon, and there are a lot of people who will review a product and give it 1 star because when they got it, it didn't work. And I think that's totally unfair, because you may have a really bad postman who is careless in the handling of packages that say fragile. And so every time you get a package from somewhere, you may see more broken items than I do. I'm very fortunate that the carriers, whether it's UPS or FedEx or DHL or OnTrack or the USPS, have all seemingly handled my stuff pretty well. You can see this box has a tear in it right here. This is OnTrack that delivered this. And that's not bad. I mean, you can see on the inside of the case how much room the manufacturer gives for intrusion into the box. So I think it's going to be okay. But I hope I just haven't jinxed myself by saying I never, ever, not never, I can't remember the last time I got a bad part. Well, no, wait a minute, that's not true. The digital audio workstation video that I haven't yet finished, well, the video's finished, I just haven't done the editing on it yet. A spoiler alert, one of the parts was bad out of the box, and it was a part you wouldn't expect. It's never happened to me before, and it was very easily corrected. But anyway, I digress. I tend to do that, don't I? All right, so what's this case look like? The case was $29.99, and it came with a power supply. There's our directions, instructions. We'll set those over there. And let's see if we can get this out of the box. Kind of packaged the same way as that HP was, right? I mean, it more or less, but it's convenient. Instead of putting separate little pieces of plastic over everything like HP did, I think these guys were a little smarter. Just put one large piece of plastic to protect the front bezel or the front face of the computer. And you know, I gotta say, not a bad looking case. I don't know which one looks more attractive to you. If we're just based on looks, are they the same size? Looks like this one is about 2 inches taller, but on the back of it, if we take this one and look at the back, and we take this one and look at the back, you have 0 expansion here, and you have lots and lots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 PCI expansion slots, plus your standard I/O shield, so you could change your motherboard out. Can't do that here because this uses a proprietary power supply. There's no room for a power supply. If this power supply, excuse me, my voice, if this power supply were to not be powerful enough for you, you could very easily change it out, and you wouldn't have to call any specific manufacturer to get that power supply like you would if I needed this power supply. I mean, I suppose I could probably go on eBay and buy something that puts out the same voltage and has the same polarity, but It's just not a common part you're going to find. You're going to have to search for it, or you're going to have to buy it directly from the manufacturer. So here's the case we're going to work with, and let's start with introducing the parts to you. So I was going to open the case, but I've decided I'm a little hyper right now. I'm so excited to do this. I'm trying to jump ahead. So let's leave that aside for right now, because I want to talk about the motherboard they use in the HP. That motherboard had built-in network, built-in sound, built-in CPU fan. The CPU has the built-in graphics into it. It had 2 memory sockets with 1 memory module, 4 gigs DDR3. The DDR3 memory, they used 1600 speed memory, which is a little bit more money, but I think they did that because it makes the onboard video more tolerable. So I matched all that. Here's how we did it. When I say we, I mean me. 5 parts. 1, 2, there's 4 gigs DDR3 1600. This is from Team. It's an inexpensive memory. I've had very good luck with it. This has a 500 gig hard drive. Here's a 500 gig Seagate hard drive. Okay, so there's first part, second part, third part. This has a CD DVD burner. Here's our CD DVD burner. What else? We have Windows 8 right here. And I found one motherboard that has the processor already built onto it, just like this board. It's pretty much the exact same board. It's from ASRock. I only found one like it. All right, so it's going to have the same problem, potentially, that if anything goes wrong with this board, you're just going to have to change the board out if it's out of warranty when something goes wrong, because everything is built on the board. Except, if I show you what's in this box, you might see, let's see, we got the cables for the hard drive, we've got an antenna, and we've got our I/O shield. Now, why do we have an antenna? Because this board, although it is almost identical in every way, shape, and form to this board right here, this has got built-in Wi-Fi. It also uses standard, well, it has one PCI Express slot right here, which is one more than you get on the HP. You have 4 SATA ports instead of just 2. You have a regular power supply connector, so you can use a standard ATX power supply. You have a USB 3.0 header, so if this case supported USB 3.0, which it does not, this case also does not have USB 3.0 on the front. So again, we're trying to make a, well, I'd say an apples to apples comparison, but I don't want to bring up Macintosh. We want to make an equal comparison. And the USB 3 header, we can put an adapter on that. I don't think they included it. It doesn't appear to, but I've got extra adapters so that we can hook up the front USB ports. I wanted to see if there's any additional, well, you know what? We can hook up the front USB ports even without the adapter, because we've got 1, 2 USB optional add-ons here. So that means that not only will we be able to add the front USBs, but we can also add the memory card reader. Remember, this has a 7-in-1 card reader, so it's one part I'm forgetting, but I bought one. Sorry, I almost forgot the card reader. The card reader costs $6.99. It looks like that. It's pretty cheap, but that's what you get for $6.99. And as you can see, unlike the card reader on the front of the HP, which is a 7-in-1, this one is a Tech Republic USB 2.0. I was trying to see if I can see how many. I think it's something like 54-in-1. I'll have to get the information on that and put it in the video notes below. So there's a lot of technical details that I just simply don't have memorized, so forgive me if I'm off by that. But basically, the gist of it that I want you to take away from that is you've got You got Memory Stick Pro, SD card, XD card, T-Flash, M2, Compact Flash. You see all these extra slots? In this computer, you only have one slot for one kind of memory card. So they promote it as like, hey, it's a 7-in-1 memory card reader. That I didn't even know a memory card reader existed like that, unless it was just some like USB add-on thing, you know, where you plugged it on the. You can buy them at the store. They're external. They plug into the USB port, and it's great if that's all you need is that one kind of memory card for whatever your camera happens to use. But anyway, $6.99. The motherboard was $99.99, and we've got USB 3.0 on the back of the motherboard, just like we have on the back of the HP. We have both DVI and VGA, just like we have on the back of the HP. In addition to that, though, we also have what appears to be HDMI and DisplayPort out. We also have better audio. As you can see, the HP computer only has the standard 3 connectors, which is microphone, speakers, and line in. And this also has an optical out, and also will allow for some surround sound. So it's a better audio chip. We have a PS2 port strictly designed for a keyboard. If that were green or half green, you could plug a mouse into it, but it will take the old style keyboard. Then this little screw that sticks out is for the antenna for the built-in Wi-Fi. That's right there. And the Ethernet on this, so we know that this is 100 megabit Ethernet, and the Ethernet on this one, if we look on the back of the box here, it is a gigabit Ethernet port. Okay, so what we've established right now is for everything you see on the table is about $350. I'll get you an exact number. I want to say it was a few pennies cheaper than the HP computer, but look at how much more we're getting. So a lot of this is identical. It's an identical size hard drive, an identical size and speed of the amount of RAM, identical DVD burner as far as speed goes. We're getting much more options on the card reader, many more options on the motherboard, and the installation of this is going to be real simple. This is basically, I think this is what they call a mini ITX board. Yeah, it's a mini ITX board. And these only take 4 screws to screw them down onto the motherboard. There's one here, right here, one here, one here, one here. If you look, even the CPU fan is virtually identical to what HP is using, right? So if you're afraid of building a computer, I mean, everything's pretty much done for you. All you gotta do is put the RAM chip in, or put the RAM chips in. You can put 2 in here. Again, for the sake of making a fair race, I only bought one 4 gig module. That's all we're going to use. Now, I would never sell this to a customer without a disclaimer that says, look, I made this computer just for a video, and I don't want to support it. And when something goes wrong with it, don't call me, because I will lose any amount of money that I would have made. If I normally charge $125 to build, configure, install a computer, and it includes the operating system, the drivers, you know, put antivirus on there, Java, Flash, and I've been through this in previous videos. I talk about what I do. And the only way I can afford to charge that little is if once I install that computer stays running without any problems for its warranty period. Now, the customer is not happy when something breaks, like a power supply burns out, and there's not a whole lot I can do about it if it happens. It's not my fault. But I can choose parts that are less likely to fail, parts that I have experience with that cost a little bit more. And that saves the customer the inconvenience of the system going down, statistically speaking, and it raises my profit margin, since I don't have to go back and work on something I've already worked on where it's not billable, and it's taking me away from something that is billable. So again, the idea that you're saving money could end up costing you a lot of time, which is great, right? If you have a lot of time, well, that's fine. I don't, the people I work with don't. We're all trying to get as much done as quickly as possible, and we want things to be fast and reliable. It doesn't matter how fast it is if it keeps crashing and you have to keep restarting it, because that won't seem fast at all, right? So these are the parts. The motherboard's called an ASRock QC5000-ITX Wi-Fi, and it supports the exact Same processor, the AMD A4 5000, and the Radeon graphics. I don't know if the Radeon graphics are the same. I think they are because it's the same APU. They call it an APU instead of AMD does, instead of a GPU because it's got a video chip built into it. And Intel chips have video chips built into them too. They'll say on the Intel chip with HD graphics. And if you don't, on the Intel side, if you don't buy the chip with the HD graphics, then the onboard video on the motherboard doesn't work. I've talked about this in other build videos. So it's important that if this is the first video you're watching, that I'll be referencing other things that I have taught in earlier videos. And all you have to do is click on my name. It's usually like just below the video, you'll see my name. Click on that and it'll take you right to my channel. You'll see all my videos posted, and you can go through there and pick out which ones you think look the most interesting and watch those. They're all completely free. And some of them are quite a few years old, so the parts that are used and the prices that are shown are representative of the time that the video was made, so do keep that in mind. These videos, who knows how long these videos will be up. I mean, this is June of 2014. You could be watching this in 2018 and the video's still up. And for the most part, I anticipate not much will have changed, except CPUs get faster, the parts get smaller, the hard drive capacity gets larger, RAM sizes get bigger. But the case is always still going to be a case. Power supply is always going to be power supply. Some things like that don't change. The memory card reader's probably still going to be just a regular old memory card reader. Optical drives, I don't know if we'll still be using them. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe some people will, some people won't. Already, some people are building computers without them. That optical drive was $15, so it's not like it's a big investment to buy it even if you don't use it or you only use it once or twice. It's still worth, to me, $15. I mean, I just got back from lunch and I spent $10 on lunch, and that lunch won't last as long as that optical drive. I can tell you that. All right, so here's the components we're going to be using. I just want to clear off the table a little bit and give myself a little room to work here, because what we need to do is open this computer case up. So let me come around there. Let me grab my my favorite electric screwdriver, my Panasonic EY7410. Panasonic has never paid me to promote their products. They probably don't even know I exist. Just being honest, I like the product, and people go, hey, what's that screwdriver you're using? So I'll put a link to that in the notes below, along with these other parts, in case you want to buy one. It is not cheap. However, if you build a lot of computers, it can certainly save you from carpal tunnel syndrome. If you're only building one computer, probably should just go ahead and use a regular mechanical screwdriver. The electric ones are most beneficial when you're taking things apart. You can strip screws out when you are putting them in with an electric screwdriver if you're not accustomed to using the electric screwdriver. So there's my disclaimer on that. So I was going to pull the side panels off. Now, side panels, it doesn't really have anything for me to grip on. There's no handle or anything. I have to find a spot. I'm just going to pull it back and take them off, and we'll just set those down right here for now. Or not. There we go. Now, inside we've got a 400 watt, it's claiming to be 400 watt anyway, power supply, standard ATX. We've got, let's see, we got a zip tie, not a zip tie, we got a wire tie, and it's got some of the old-fashioned motherboard plastic standoffs I haven't seen in years, along with the regular standoffs and miscellaneous computer screws and a speaker. That's kind of nice they include the speaker. This whole case with the power supply was $29.99, and they even included a power cable. Can you imagine? All right. Is that getting old yet? Just wait till I say it next time, because it's going to get older. All right, there's not a lot of room in here. I mean, this is a standard ATX case. We could have gone with a smaller case, but again, want to try and keep things fair and equal. This is our front port umbilicals, our lights and switches. This is our USB 2.0 header, and this is our audio, which supports both the HD audio standard and the AC97 standard. Of course, this is the part that intimidates most people, but actually with this case it doesn't look as intimidating as with others because it's just so much simpler. So one of the first things we can do, one of the easiest things I should say we can do, is we can put the optical drive in and we can put the memory card reader in because they're very simple. If I reach around behind inside this computer, I can push this plastic cover out. Well, I think that's how it comes out. I've never worked with this case before, so I probably am doing things the hard way. Let's see, maybe this whole cover just comes off. Sometimes on the cheap cases they screw the front cover in and it can be a bear to get off. And I don't know if this one is screwed in. Nope. Well, that's pretty good. There it is. There's our front cover right there. So that's nice. You know, for a $30 case, I didn't expect that. So that makes it a little easier to work on. So we can pop this, we can pop one of these out. I like to use the top one myself for the optical drive. And I'm just trying to figure out. By the way, there's usually an instruction manual that you can read that tells you how to take these things out. And you can certainly read that. To get this one out, I actually have to bend the tab and push in. It's going to come out from the inside. So you actually have to remove this to get that small panel out. Most people wouldn't use that because they think, when they see that, they just think of that, you know, either the old-fashioned zip drive or a 1.44 floppy drive. But we're going to need that for the optical card reader. So what we can do now that I've got that done is actually snap this back on. Now that you see, you got a good view of that, right? So you know what that's going to look like. Sometimes it's easier for me to show you how things go together when I leave parts off. But I don't want to give you the impression that that's the correct way to build it. That's just for visual so you can see better. It looks like our reset button is there, our power button is there, USB 2s are there, headphone, microphone, in every way, shape, and form, very identical to what we're getting on the HP. Here's our card reader. So we can go ahead and we can take the wire tie off of the card reader. We're going to feed anything that goes into the front of the computer actually gets fed in from the front. So in other words, we're not going to put it in from back here. We're not going to put it in this way. Although it may be possible, you're really working harder than you need to. And in some cases, it's not possible. So we'll feed it in from the front. Make sure you've got it right side up. I've done this so quickly that I've put them in and tighten the screws down, and then I look at it and I'm like, wait a minute, I put that in upside down. Some of them, depending on the case and the card reader, some of them you can't put in upside down. So I want to get that bag of screws right here. We're going to dump this out. And there are basically two different types of screws. I've gone through this before on other builds. There's a fine threaded screw and a coarse threaded screw. And we're going to use the fine threaded screw. I don't know how well that's going to pick that up. But it's a, you'll be able to just, all you got to do is pay attention to them. They have a different head on them. They've got a rounded head versus the hex head that is on the regular case style screws, which this would be like a regular case style screw. And then the thread on it is coarse. And I've talked about this so many times in other videos. I think if you need more clarification on that, you should definitely check out some of my other PC build videos. I get into that detail because I want to get through this as quickly as possible with as few edits as possible. One of the delays, and there goes one of my screws. One of the delays, major delays in getting videos out is the amount of production time they take to edit. So the less editing I have to do, the faster I can get the video out and so you guys can enjoy them. Unfortunately, when I try and make them more professional and it requires more editing and I don't like the way I said something and I have to go back, I have to reshoot, I end up with a much higher quality video, in my opinion, but it takes me 10 times longer to make it. So all I'm doing at this point is just putting these two screws in. I want to make sure I don't have any wires trapped because I kind of see I'm looking right here and I see a wire trapped right under there. So I'm going to take that screw back out because I just noticed that what's happening is the front case umbilicals have kind of gotten caught underneath this lip that holds the optional 3.5-inch device in, which in this case is our memory card reader. And if you're not paying attention to that, when you tighten the screw down, you could pinch that cable and short it out against the metal of the case, which would be a grounding point, and then you're going to be really upset because your computer's not going to work, and you may actually burn your motherboard out, which would not be a defect in workmanship or materials, and therefore not a warranty issue because you screwed it up. However, worst case scenario, it cost you $100 to buy another motherboard. You wouldn't have to buy everything all over again. So if you just take your time, watch what you're doing, and I've said this before, enjoy it. It's fun to build a computer. And I guess I'm just a real nerd that I think it's fun, but I really enjoy it. I mean, I built more computers than you can shake a stick at. And you can shake a stick at a lot of computers. And I still have fun doing it. And I really enjoy the sense of satisfaction. Here's our optical drive. This is an ASUS branded optical drive. I don't normally buy the ASUS brand, but it was on sale. And since we're trying to beat HP's price, I just got the cheapest one I could get that reads and writes and burns CDs and DVDs. So once again, we're using the exact same screw that we used on the memory card reader, which is that fine threaded screw with the round head. They always use a Phillips number 2 screwdriver. And as I mentioned, if you're using an electric screwdriver, it can be very easy to cross thread a screw, and that can just ruin your whole day. This screwdriver has a clutch on it, which will shut off at a certain torque setting, and I've got it set to 3 right now, and that way I don't have to worry about over tightening the screws and stripping them out. But the danger is still there of cross threading, and that's just something you get a feel for with experience. So again, if you're just building one computer, save your money and buy better components than buying an electric screwdriver. But if you want to get in the business, it is definitely worth buying an electric screwdriver because it will save you a lot of time, and as I mentioned, potentially carpal tunnel syndrome and other repetitive type injury from, tightening and loosening screws all day long. Okay, so there's what the front of our computer looks like so far compared to our HP. Now, based on just the looks alone, quick survey, which would you rather have? Which one do you think looks more attractive? If you were at the store and you saw this computer and this computer side by side, they were both priced that, after sales tax or whatever, out the door, they were both, let's say, $350. They both shared the same processor, the same amount of memory, and the same size hard drive. Which one, based on looks alone, would you buy? Because to me, I think this one's much more futuristic looking, much more modern. I can already see with my own eyes, even if I don't know what this is, I know this has more of them than this does. And I also like the flat black. This is going to show fingerprints and dust really bad because it's glossy. And this just has a little glossy section here, but for the most part, it's flat. And that's going to hide fingerprints a lot better. It's not flat everywhere. It's glossy in some parts, but this is glossy across the entire front. It's only flat on the edges. You'll also notice when I put the panels back on, there's no stickers on this case versus this one that has the sticker. And look at how bad the sticker, the sticker doesn't even, look at this. That shouldn't be that easy to pull that off. Wow. I actually might just save this and put it on this one, at least the approachable design part. We'll just cut the HP out there and put a CH or something. No, actually, I don't want my name on either one of these, to be honest. Let me just set this back here with the care in which it was built. Okay. And let's go back to doing what we were doing here, which is installing some of the components. The hard drive, we can install the hard drive next. We got the hard drive right here. This is a Seagate 500 gig hard drive. I think it was $54.99, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have all the prices and the details in the video notes below the video. And we can place the hard drive. This is an unusual case design, and I can just tell by looking at it that there are no trays here. So the hard drive is going to have to mount similarly to how, if you remember how the hard drive was in here, it was mounted like this. It's mounted sideways. And hard drives don't care. They don't care if they're upside down or right side up, or none of that matters. And we can place the hard drive here, or we can place it down here. Looks like there's room for 2 hard drives. It doesn't look like, yeah, there you can put an SSD in here. It's got the screws that's the holes rather that say SSD, which is really cool. That computer doesn't seem to have that option, although adapters can be purchased to get around that. And okay, so what if we don't have an SSD? What if we have a regular drive? Can we put a regular drive in this? Let's see. That continues to say SSD. Oh, all right, I get it. I get it. Took me a minute. Sorry, first time working with the case, not reading any instructions. These long slots are going to line up with a standard 3.5-inch hard drive, and then these round holes, which you'll see there's a set here, there's a set, well, I'm trying to figure that out. There's one set here and one set here. So you can mount 2 solid state drives, and then there's a set of these longer elongated holes here and here, so you can have one of each. You could have a regular hard drive and a solid state, or 2 hard drives, hard disk drives, or 2 solid state drives. That expansion is available to you. It is not available to you on this one. Now the hard drive, in most builds you see me use the screws on the sides, but hard drives also have screws on the holes for screws on the bottom. And you'll typically see me use the bottom ones on the solid state drives, which are the 2.5-inch drives. This is a 3.5-inch drive, which is a standard desktop drive. And we want to use the coarse threaded screws, preferably the ones that don't have the, let me see. We want them to be coarse thread and to be short. And I've got to look at the screws they gave us to determine, we know we need 4 for the motherboard and we need 4 for the hard drive. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the hex head screws, which actually, the hex head screws, they give us 6 of those, no, 7. And those should fit in the standoffs. Don't make a liar out of me. This is what happens when there's no rehearsal and no editing. This is weird. It appears that normally the coarse threaded screws are used on mounting the motherboard, but this is a mini ITX board, and so it's going to use, believe it or not, the motherboard is going to mount. See how I'm checking this? I'm taking the motherboard standoff and just the bag of screws and figuring out which one will actually screw in there without any resistance or problem. That's the same screw that we've used solely right now, is the those little round screws with the fine threads. And we better have 4 of those left. 1, 2, 3, and whoa, yeah, I'm already using one. There's 4 of those, and there's 4 standoffs. There are no standoffs at all that come with the board. And then they give us 4 of these plastic old-fashioned style standoffs, which make the board a little more difficult to remove, but you just pop it in place when they're in place. We're not going to use those on this build, but if we had a motherboard that required more than 4 screws, they've only given us 4 standoffs, so we'd have to use one of these plastic standoffs. But because the motherboard is only going to use 4 screws, we're going to use all 4 screws and all 4 standoffs, if that is clear. And then what I'm going to do, I think what I'm going to do here is I like these little, I like to use these screws that have the round heads on them for the hard drives. Although to be honest, the little hex head screw will work just as well. It's just back in the day they didn't make these hex head screws this shallow, And what would happen is when you put the screw in to the side of the hard drive, it would go in too deep and ground out against the side of the motherboard. And for the most part, the hard drive manufacturers and the people who make the screws have worked this out, and it's not a problem anymore. But it's just something I learned back in the day, and it's something I still do today, and I'm just explaining why. So that's the reasoning behind how I choose the round screw over the square screw. Ultimately, it doesn't make a difference. It's going to hold the hard drive in place equally well. And we're just going to, I'm going to put this drive here on the bottom. You know, I could put it in the middle, but I'm just thinking that's, you know, the motherboard's going to be up a bit high in here. So I'm going to have a lot of space and airflow down here on the bottom. There's no fan on the front of this case. There's no fan on the rear of this case. So for 30 bucks, you don't get any additional fans. But again, it's not needed. HP put that fan in there, and I'm sure that computer will run fine without that rear exhaust fan that HP has. And for a company that's shaving, you know, cutting every corner to shave every penny off the cost, you'd think if you didn't need the fan, they wouldn't have included it. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe you need it. That'll be for further testing later. And you can see it's taking me a lot longer to explain how to do it than to just show you, like installing this drive. That drive installed in a matter of seconds. This is why I like YouTube videos, because I get to demonstrate it. If this was just a podcast, you could just hear me try and describe it, or if it was a book with a couple of pictures on a couple of angles, that may or may not be quite as helpful. So at least this way you get the idea of exactly how that goes in, what it's going to look like, and how this compares to the other systems that I build. You know, those $800, $1,000 systems. Look at the quality of the case. This is nice that the corners are all rolled, where they take the edges of the metal and they roll that corner. On cheaper cases, if they don't roll these corners, it's very easy to cut your hands. I do have scars. I don't know if you can see that one that's on this finger right here. I'm not giving you the finger. It's just, that's where the scar is. And it's just from, you know, sharp edges. And I hope you have a tetanus shot. But this case is actually much better than I was expecting for $29.99. I don't expect much out of this power supply. Power supply says it's 8 amps RMS and 5 amps RMS for 230 volt input. I mean, that sounds pretty good. Usually on cheap power supplies, these numbers are exaggerated, but we're not pulling that much power, so as long as it can do the basics, it should be fine. We're not you know, building a beast of a rig here and then throwing a little tiny power supply in there, or a weak power supply, or an overrated power supply that is actually you know, the manufacturer has rated it to do more than it can actually do. Or sometimes the manufacturers rate it that it could put out 400 watts, but just for a few seconds. And if you continue to pull 400 watts from it on a regular basis, it'll burn out. It'll get hot. It'll just burn out. I don't know what the case is with this. I've never heard of this DA series, Diablo Tech. I never heard of it. So maybe they've been around for 100 years. I don't know. Well, obviously not 100 years, but I don't know if it's going to be good or not. I can tell you that for $250 for the parts, I'm not expecting much. I'm kind of expecting the worst and hoping for the best. Here's our I/O shield. I/O shield, you've seen me put this in dozens of times before. The hole for the keyboard is going to go towards the top. There's also a hole for the antenna for the motherboard, for the Wi-Fi. And then speaker holes always go on the bottom. And this just snaps into place. Hopefully you can see that. This just snaps right in. It's real easy. If you were to put this in upside down, you know, you just push it out and flip it around. No big deal. You'll know if you put it in upside down because your motherboard, you won't be able to install your motherboard if you put it in upside down. Okay, so with that part done, I've got to look at my motherboard and look at my standoffs and figure out where I need to place the standoff. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, and you see I've got a hand on the case. This is grounding me. A lot of people wonder about static discharge, electrostatic discharge, and that can be a problem if you're in an area with that's very dry, like I am in Arizona. If you work on carpeting, if you have a habit of always scratching your head, or if you don't use fabric softener on your clothes, that can create static. So I work in the kitchen. It's very bright in here. Most kitchens are tiled. Anything that's tile or wood is good. Plastic, not so much. Plastic it depends on the plastic. It can conduct electricity. You want to stay away from styrofoam, you know, like the plastic bags these things come in, they can static shock you when you're taking the case out of the box. You can static shock the case all day long. There's nothing to hurt. And if everything's grounded properly on the case, it's never going to touch the board. Also, you should know that where the most dangerous static discharge occurs is with the raw components themselves. Once the little tiny chips and stuff are mounted onto the circuit board, they're much less likely, although they're still susceptible, they're much less likely to have any damage occur to static discharge. So really at the factory where they build the board is where they need to be most careful. But that doesn't mean you should be completely careless with it either. But there's some people who are, because you can't see static, you can only feel it after the fact. They go, did I just break my motherboard? Oh, I don't know, did you? I mean, plug it in and turn it on and see what happens. I don't know if you broke your motherboard. So the best thing you can do is to not handle the motherboard in a way that, should you have a static charge built up in you, would discharge on any of the components. You can see I'm holding this board by the heatsink. I can discharge static into that heatsink all day long. It's not going to touch any of the components or the circuitry of this board. I can also hold the board by the edges. And you know, I can grab it by the slot here and hold it by the PCI Express slot and the top edge. I just want to avoid touching all the metal stuff on the bottom and all the metal stuff on the top, if you want to get real technical. So don't touch the metal stuff. Although the heatsink is metal, but that's our exception. All right, if I haven't thoroughly confused you, I apologize if I have. So looking at this motherboard's going to go in like this, and I know that we're going to need to use, there's really only two places for these standoffs to go on the top. One right here. I'm just going to put these in with my fingers. I'm not going to tighten them down until I verify that they're in the right location, because otherwise you're just working harder, right? So let's put the other one in. So there is 2 of the 4, and then the other 2 are going to go, let's see, right by the audio port. Okay. So the other 2 are just going to go right down here, close to the bottom of the I/O shield. And then exactly below the next one, you know, we put one right up here in this top corner. So the next one's going to go right down here. Now, that's where I think they go. What I do is what I call a dry fit, and that's where I just grab the board and line it up. Watch these little grounding tabs and such on the I/O shield so they don't get caught under things. And feed the back of the board in first. Keep your power cables out of the way, and make sure that all 4 holes that you're going to mount the board all have the standoffs behind them. If you've got 4 holes, you want 4 standoffs. If you've got 5 holes, you want 5 standoffs. If you have 6 holes, you want 6 standoffs. You want to use them all. So since we know that these are now in the right position, we have the right amount, the biggest concern is you put a standoff somewhere where there's not a hole on the back of the board and you can't see it when you put the board in place. Then it ends up grounding out against some of these metal parts and you toast your board. It's a very simple thing to avoid by just simply paying attention. Now these standoffs are a standard 5mm. You can use a regular screwdriver and just buy the 5mm bit. I use a screwdriver specifically for this purpose because I build a lot of these and I don't want to have to keep changing bits. I'd rather just have one screwdriver do one job, another screwdriver do another. But if you're just building one computer, you only need one mechanical screwdriver to do it. Now before I mount this, I could put the memory in it. Might be a little easier to put the memory in it now. It really shouldn't matter whether I put the memory in the first socket or the second socket. The board says, in very fine writing, right down here, it says DDR3_A1 and DDR3_A2. That tells us that the one on top is considered socket 1 and the one on the bottom is considered socket 2. Now I haven't looked at the motherboard manual, but in most cases you use socket 1 first. So that's what I'm going to do, and unless the thing doesn't turn on. You'll also see these are SATA 3 ports. So it says SATA 3 A0, let's see, SATA 3-A0, SATA 3-1, SATA 3-A1, and SATA 3-2. So I'll have to take a look at that. We've also got a place for a chassis fan right here. There's a fan header, even though we don't have a chassis fan to hook up. We could add one if we wanted to. There's another chassis fan header right here. This one's a 4-pin. The CPU fan is just a 3-pin, just like it may actually be the same motherboard manufacturer. I wouldn't be surprised. You know, that perhaps perhaps HP just had them remove the standard power connector and well, no, that's not true either, because they'd have to remove all the power regulators since all that's being done externally on this model. But even still, I wouldn't be surprised if ASRock makes that board. It wouldn't be unheard of. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to grab my screwdriver and grab one of the last, I've only got 4 of these little screws left, which is the exact number I need, thankfully. And I think what I'm going to do is put the board in, and then I'm going to put the RAM in, just because I always put the RAM in first. So just to mix it up and do it a little different. And normally I would lay the case down flat, but then you guys won't be able to see what I'm doing. Or I have to move all the camera equipment around, and then that slows down the video production process and the editing process. And then again, you'd have to wait longer for the video. So I'm just going to take HP's attitude here and cut a few corners. And all I want to do is get the screw started. If I can just get one of these started, my life will be a lot easier. There we go. And then that holds the board in place for me. And you don't have to go to opposite corners, but it's a good habit to get into, just to make sure that everything lines up correctly and doesn't warp. So there's 3 of the 4, and there's 4 of the 4. And I just want to wiggle that around, make sure that I want to check and make sure all these ports on the back are coming through the holes. And I want to make sure that none of the grounding tabs are blocking. Like there's a grounding tab above the gigabit Ethernet port. And if I wasn't paying attention, that tab would have folded down. And I'd have the board all screwed down and all put together, and I'd go to plug the network, and I'd go, oh, rats. I'd take the whole thing back apart again. So now's the time to check that. Usually before I tighten the screws down, I push the motherboard this direction because I want it seated. And what I'm doing is I'm just grabbing the edge of the board, careful not to touch the components, using my thumb as a brace. And then the screwdriver, as I mentioned, has a clutch. It'll auto turn off when it hits a certain torque. If you're tightening these by hand, they do not have to be super tight. They just have to be not loose. So just making them just a little past snug is really all you need. You're not sealing it against water or anything like that. There's no gaskets involved here. That's it. So all these screws and extra standoffs that they give you with this motherboard are all just spares, and put them away because you may need them in the future should you decide to replace this board with, I don't know, something good in the future. So that's an option that you have with this computer that you don't have with that computer. Okay, how you doing? You still with me? The build process is not too bad so far. Actually, probably one of the easiest builds we've ever done. Certainly the most inexpensive build I've ever done. We're not done yet. Still have to put the memory in. Let's go ahead and do that now. Again, this memory is made by a company called Team. They're relatively new to the memory scene, and they've got very competitively priced memory. And when I shop for memory, I'm not always just looking for the cheapest price. I'm also looking at the little numbers. You'll see like a 9-9-9-10 or a 10-10-10-24, whatever. That's referring to the speed of the memory, and the smaller those numbers are, the faster that memory is. So that's in addition to the actual rated speed of the memory module, which is the 1600 speed that I mentioned earlier. So anyway, this is a decent memory module, manufacturer. This memory module has a heat sink on it, which is pretty nice. That means it's a lot safer to handle it because you can hold it anywhere on that heat sink without any worry of static discharge, electrostatic discharge. And we're going to go ahead and, you see it's got a notch in it. It only goes in one way. Go ahead and put it in that socket labeled socket 1, making sure that these little tabs are in the open position, which they are. And we're going to put that in there. And you heard it click. That's in place. Now I'm going to unwind, or take this rubber band rather, off of the power supply cables, because now it's time to hook power up to everything, which is pretty easy to do. So you've got the large connector here. That's your main motherboard power. It's got the additional old-fashioned style where you can take the old motherboards way back in the day used to only use a 20-pin connector. And all the more modern motherboards within the last, I don't know, 8 or 10 years have been using this 24-pin connector. I'm surprised that this power supply is backwards compatible to that old standard, but it doesn't hurt anything. These wires, I don't know what gauge they are. They're very thin. They're certainly, I guess I'm a bit spoiled working with the Corsair and the Seasonic and the Antec power supplies, because their cables are just a lot thicker than that. We're not going to do any sort of fancy cable management on this because we don't have any room for cables to run back here. Do not run cables in the back of a case that doesn't have room, that isn't designed for it. I do see there is a loop right here, so it would be possible to run something behind this loop, but it is awfully tight. So what I think I'm going to do, because this is a budget computer, I'm really not too worried about the cabling, but I can guarantee you the end result will be much nicer than the slop of cabling they've got in that beast. And there's one other power connector somewhere on this board. I know it's on there. It's got to be on there somewhere. Where is it? Well, maybe I am wrong. I do not see a CPU power connector on this, probably because it's sort of a laptop style CPU. It's not a CPU you can change. When the CPU goes or the motherboard goes, they go together. So kind of a Romeo and Juliet setup here. Yeah, it looks like there's one less cable to hook up. That's cool. I don't have a problem with that. Okay, now when it comes to hooking up the power supply gives us plenty of cables to use. It doesn't matter which of the connectors we use on which cable. If the connector fits, then you've got the right connector. I mean, it's that simple. So we're going to grab one of these connectors here, and we're going to put it right up here into the optical drive. Now the optical drive there's not a lot of space between the back of the optical drive and the back of the power supply. And I've got pretty small hands, and I can typically get them in there to do this. But if your hands are larger than mine, or you're just having difficulty getting into that spot, you can always unscrew the optical drive. In fact, typically you just need to loosen the screws and just push it forward 1/4 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. And that's usually all the space you need. Or take the screws out entirely and push the drive out 3/4 of the way if you want. Then hook your power cable up and then plug it back in. Slide it back in rather, and tighten it back down. All right, so that's power to the optical drive, and let's get power to the hard drive. Again, this is a good time to keep your cables all nice and neat, straight, and untangled. In the case of the hard drive, we're going to go right there as our power connector. Okay, so we've got power to the motherboard, power to the hard drive, power to the optical drive. We've got our USB card reader, which is very easy to plug in. It's just one plug. It's got 10 little holes, and one of the holes has got a plug in it. So that means there's 9 holes, right? And when you look on the motherboard, you'll see there's an option for what's called USB 1 and USB 2. These are both USB 2 connectors, and you just rotate the connector to line up with the missing pin to match where the blocked hole is. And it doesn't matter if you use number 1 or number 2. It's entirely your choice. They work equally well. And in fact, you know, I could run this cable, you know, I'm starting to look at it. I could run this cable around just to make the cable a little cleaner. There's not a lot you can do with cable management on this, but we can do a little bit. So we could take it through here. See, be a little creative. Take it through here and then run it. Boy, I really don't like that. I don't like that at all. I take it back. Let's not run any cables back here, because this edge, I mean, this looks like a nice cable loop, but I'm not sure, unless you're going to run it up through here, this edge is going to come right up against the panel, and it's going to pinch this, and over time it may wear and erode a hole right into it. So sometimes you're just going to have to stick with looking at your cables. There's no case window on this anyway. It was a nice thought. But as you can see, one of the enjoyable things about computers, at least one of the things I enjoy, is the variety, and that it's not always the same, and that there are so many different options to express your own individuality that aren't right or wrong. They're just you. I love that about computers. It's like when you get to choose your own desktop wallpaper. It's like when you go to a restaurant and you tell them you want something made the way you like it, versus just making what they've already got pre-made. Me, I prefer to have things the way I like it, and maybe you think the way I like it's weird. So what? That's the way I like it. Maybe I think the way you like it's weird. So our audio plug right here, HD audio, is the one we're going to use. The other one, it says AC97. They both look exactly the same. They both have the same missing plug. If you plug the wrong one in, your front port audio won't work. On most modern motherboards, they should all be using HD audio. So we're simply going to plug HD audio in and line up the missing plug, or the missing pin rather, with where the plug is covering the hole. And that just plugs in like that. And again, I'm trying to get through this quickly, so I'm avoiding a lot of the close-up shots because I've already been through this on other boards. They're the same connectors. They're located in different places, but they're the exact same connectors. And if you need more detail on those connectors, be sure and check out some of my earlier videos where I have real nice crystal clear close-ups of those cables going on. Okay, so that hooked up our card reader. That hooked up our audio, front port audio. Now we've got front port USB, which is going to go on the other USB header on the board. Same exact connector. We're just going to go on the one above it. Bam. USB front ports hooked up. All we have left now is the hard drive LED, the power LED, the reset switch, and the power switch. So the hard drive LED, somewhere on this board, it's going to have the connectors that we need for the front ports. And let's see, that's a COM port. That's not it. And there's times like this where the writing is so small and the lighting is so dark, I can't really see it. So I'm going to go to the motherboard manual. Yeah, it happens. And I'm going to look for, very quickly, I'm going to scan through this as quickly as I can to find the front port header. And this has a TPM header, that's interesting. the trusted platform module, and Google it. Front panel audio, we already did that. Oh, here we go. System panel header is what they call that. And where is it? So what they did in the manual is they showed me, here's the onboard system panel header, close up, but doesn't show me where in reference to the rest of the board that's located. My guess is it's this one way up here. So usually there's a picture of the board. Usually, somewhere in the manual. Yeah, there is. There's a picture of the board. And where I think it is on the board. I think it's right here, which this shows is number 7. This is a bad manual because the one page shows me what the individual plugs are, but not where they are. This shows me where they are, but not what they do. And this says that this is plug number, look at item 7. So I got to turn the page and figure out number 7 is system panel header. Okay, so that's right. And in fact, with my glasses, it's very small, but I can see that it follows the standard pins of all the other boards that I build from ASUS and Gigabyte, which is the power LED goes on the top left, hard drive LED goes directly below it, power switch goes beside the power LED on the top row, and the reset switch goes directly below that next to the hard drive LED. It's the standard same layout you've seen me do half a dozen times before in my other build videos. So I'm going to just take care of that very quickly. Again, the header is up here, up at the top. The easiest, get the words out, Carrie. The hard drive LED with the red wire is positive, is going to go towards the outer corner. So the bottom 2 pins, very bottom row of this connector, closest to me is the power switch, or the positive wire. Wow, I don't even know where I got power switch from. The red wire on the hard drive LED cable goes on the positive side, and the positive side is the very first pin, the one closest to me on the bottom row. And the power LED is the exact same way, using the exact same 2 pins that are directly above the hard drive LED. Okay, so the green wire, which also has a little plus symbol on it, is going to go directly over the red wire on the hard drive LED. If I can get my hands in there. It's getting a little crowded. Kind of regretting the order in which I did this because this big cable's kind of in my way. And I could take it off, but out of my stubbornness, I want to leave it on. Okay, so let's go ahead and put the power LED wire on. All I'm trying to do is line this up, and unfortunately I have to get right in your way. So I'm trying to stand off to the side so you can, for those of you who have a big screen, this is in 4K, and you might be able to zoom in enough to see what I'm doing. If you're looking at it on a smartphone, not so much. I've plugged it on the wrong pin. I'm 1 pin over. It's got to go right there. There we go. And then the white power connector is the -1, and that's going to go above the white connector of the hard drive LED below it. So again, I've just plugged on the wrong one. You're using the very first 2 pins of the top row for the power LED, and the very first 2 pins on the bottom row for the hard drive LED. If you were to put these LEDs on backwards, as long as they're in the right connector, it doesn't hurt anything. It just means your power light won't come on, or your hard drive light won't blink when your hard drive has activity. You have to turn the cable around. It doesn't hurt anything. But ideally, you build it right the first time and you don't have to do that. So the reset switch now is going to go right beside the bottom row of pins, the next 2 pins available beside the hard drive LED, and the power switch goes directly above that on the 2 pins, the next 2 pins I should say, right after your power LED wires. And just push them on. They don't click on or anything, they just slide on. And you can see what I've done here. I kind of looped that kind of funny. Well, I guess that's all right. Now we can clean up this cabling a little bit later, but what I want to know right now is this going to work? I mean, I can tell you right now it's not going to work because I haven't hooked up the data cables. I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't know how many times I've done this where I'm making a video and I'm ready to turn it on and I haven't hooked up the data cables. I don't know why I do that. I guess I'm just anxious. At this point, I start to get anxious. Well, be patient, enjoy your build. Okay. There's one connector here that's got a curve to it, a 90-degree angle there. And we're going to plug that one on the back of the optical drive. And then we're going to plug the optical drive into, I don't know the difference between A1 and A2 and just 1 and 2. I'd have to refer to the manual for that. I don't really think it matters, so I'm gonna guess, okay? And I'm just gonna plug it down here onto number 1 because I want the hard drive in number 0 because I want the hard drive to be first. Again, you can change the order of the boot devices in the BIOS anyway, but ideally, if you hook it up in the right order, that's just one less thing you have to do because it'll just default to trying to boot to device 0 first without you having to make any changes in the BIOS to the boot device. If I plugged it in the other way, I'd have to say boot to device 1 first instead of booting to device 0 first. It's just not going to prevent the computer from working correctly. It's not making the computer any slower. It's just by default, the computer boots in numerical order of the devices. So I want to plug the hard drive in 0 and any other hard drives after that, and the optical drive as the last thing in the SATA ports. If I don't take the time to do that, I've got to go in the BIOS and make the change there. So I've only said that like 4 times now, so you got it, right? Okay, here's the fun part. We're going to find out if it's going to turn on. So this is good timing because my battery's just about run out on my camera. I'm going to move this piece of junk out of the way, get the monitor and the keyboard and the mouse set up, and we're going to find out what happens. Here we go. Okay, now while I've been cleaning up my mess and getting ready to turn this thing on for the first time, I decided to pull the manual out and find out what the deal was with the 4 SATA connectors and why one's labeled 1 and one is labeled A1 and one labels 2 and one labels A2. They're all 4 SATA 6 gigabit connectors. And what it is that 2 of them are the AMD chipset and 2 of them are the ASMedia chipset. And they all support the same NCQ and hot swap. So I don't know why you would prefer. In fact, I'll just read what it says in the manual. It says the motherboard has 2 SATA 6 gigabit per second connectors by AMD FT3 Kabini A4 5000 quad-core APU, support NCQ, AHCI, and hot plug, and then the other 2 SATA 3 6.0 gigabit connectors are by ASMedia. It's the ASM 1061 chip, which supports NCQ, AHCI, and hot plug. So those should be identical. It'll be interesting to do a hard drive performance or read-write test and see if one of the connectors is faster than the other, even though they're rated the same. Sometimes one company's drivers are just written better or more effective or more efficient than the other company's drivers. So I'm going to be curious about that. That'll be part of our tests. All the tests are going to come into part 3 of this series. The series is going to have, apparently it's going to have numerous parts. The other thing is I realized I didn't plug my little speaker on. I forgot about the little speaker, and usually little speaker goes on the front panel header. But on this motherboard, well, first of all, some motherboards have built-in speakers, and I thought, well, maybe this one has built-in speaker, but it doesn't. What they did is they moved the speaker header right here. This is optional, you don't have to have the speaker. There's no positive or negative. It's a 4-pin connector, and it doesn't matter which way you put it on. As long as you're on the speaker connector with the speaker plug, the speaker's going to work. So that's all there is to that. Basically, you're just going to hear the beep when the system posts. Post is short for power on self-test. It's the very first thing the computer does when you turn it on. And okay, so you see, sometimes I read the manual, but don't tell anybody because I don't want to ruin my reputation. All right, so now I just want to clear the rest of this out of the way. This is what I was doing after I just changed my camera battery, as I was just kind of trying to clean my area up a little bit. I need to move this out because I need room for the monitor, so we'll just put this over here for now. And You know what? We'll just to add insult to injury there to HP. We're going to use their keyboard and mouse. It is one thing I did not buy because I didn't realize this computer came with a keyboard and mouse, the HP. That's how much attention I was paying when I ordered it. So to make this a fair comparison, I will add a very, very cheap keyboard and mouse, USB, to the parts list below, which is going to take me up a few dollars over when you include the price of Windows 8.1. It'll take me up over the price of the HP by a couple of dollars. But I'm getting a couple of dollars more than a couple of dollars, I should say, in value with regards to the upgradability, the Wi-Fi, the gigabit Ethernet, the front port USB 3.0 option. So if I wanted to put, for example, I could take this memory card reader out and I could put a 4-port, well, not a 4-port, I could put a 2-port USB 3.0 header right in here. They sell those. I could also have purchased a USB 3.0 card reader, although I think that's a waste of money because the cards themselves typically read slow and it'd be a waste of USB 3.0. But on the other hand, I'm not using it. But I didn't even realize this board had that until I ordered it. Again, I'm going through this so quickly. I see this case has some rivets, I'm just noticing now, that are crooked. And that's just, you know, it's a $30 case with the power supply included. So if that's the biggest complaint I've got, that's actually quite an accomplishment for them. Let me grab my monitor. Let's get the monitor set up here. Let's get this plugged in. And let's get the DVI cable. I always like to go to the DVI cable because it's the one that's already ready to go. We got that plugged in the back. Let's plug the keyboard and the mouse into the back. So there's our mouse. And there's our keyboard. Now there is a little antenna in here that we can hook up. Let's put it back in the bag. I don't have to hook it up right now, but just for the sake of completeness, here's the antenna. This is a little screw part that hangs out, and that's for our built-in Wi-Fi. And you don't have to use the Wi-Fi. It's got regular LAN, Ethernet, or Wi-Fi. You can use one or the other. And initially, when we install the operating system, we're not going to have any internet access at all. But like I said, for the sake of being complete, we'll throw that on there. And then finally, just grab the power cord here. Let's put the power on. It's the last thing you ever hook up on a computer before you turn it on is the power cord. Make sure the switch on the back of the power supply is flipped on. If you have one of these little switches that's a voltage selector for 115 volts or 220 or 230, before you plug this in, you want to make sure that, not many power supplies have this, but when you buy the cheap stuff, you know, the cheap stuff still have these little switches. Most modern power supplies are auto sensing now, and they do that for you. So that's on 115 volts because I'm in the USA and that's what we use. And if I built it correctly, it's going to turn on and the lights are going to work. It's not going to be able to boot, so I'm going to need my Windows 8 disk. So let me get that ready. I'm kind of thinking positive here, aren't I? Because I'm assuming it's going to turn on. And really not a lot of fans to check. There's a fan in the power supply and there's a fan on the CPU. So you can see when I gave it power, the red light went on this card reader. That is normal for this card reader. That's just the way it is. I don't know why. So let's hit the power button and let's see what happens. Again, it's the very first time I'm turning this on. I see the lights come on. I see the fan is spinning. Is my monitor turned on? Yeah, my monitor's on. So I'm just waiting for the monitor to display something. That just told me which controller it was on, which I wasn't really paying attention to. And it's going to say it's got nothing to boot to. So we're going to go ahead and put the Windows 8. This happens to be Windows 8 Pro because that's the disk I have. But performance-wise, it's not giving me any advantage or disadvantage to the Windows 8.1 that's included with the HP computer. So let's go ahead and do our Windows 8 installation. and we'll just fast forward this part because it's very boring. Okay, we're at the point right now where it's asking for the PC name. Now I'm going to be honest with you, this PC isn't really that much better performance-wise than the HP computer. So I'm going to be fair and also not to confuse myself with the real computers I have on my network. I'm going to call this one I'm going to call this one Son of Crapola. Let's just go ahead and put that in there. And we're going to use Express Settings. Now the username here isn't really the same. You're not a sucker if you build a system like this. But because you would knowingly be choosing these parts. So I think a good name for a user that would knowingly choose these parts at this day and age to spend such little money. Oh, let me think, what would be a good username for that? Now if I put that in there, only one person's going to get it, so that won't be funny. This is the toughest part of the build right now. I need an honest and fair username here. I'm going to call this one Optimist, because bad decision maker is just too much to type. So finalizing your settings, it says hi, hello, we're getting things ready. Now there may be a difference. I've been reading some of the comments and people have said that the Windows is taking care of things, has nothing to do with HP. It's something that Microsoft added to the 8.1 installation. I believe this is a Windows 8 installation disk, not an 8.1, so I'll have to upgrade it to 8.1. So the installation process is a little different. But I'm going to upgrade it to 8.1 before we do any of the testing. In fact, I'm going to make sure and put updates, all the missing updates on the HP box and on this box, so that we have a fair and equal playing field. That includes installing all the drivers that need to be installed on this that have already been installed on that, making sure the latest BIOS is installed on both of them. Again, we want everything to be current, up to date when we run our test. I want it to be completely factual and unbiased. I want no opinion here. I just want facts. So here it says we're getting your PC ready. This will take a few minutes. Again, we can check to make sure our lights are working. The power light is on. The hard drive light is blinking. Says let's start. You know, I kind of like this phrasing better in Windows 8. It's not as ambiguous as this. We're taking care of some things that they added in 8.1, and thank you for the commenter who pointed that out. As you can see, I learned as much from you guys. You know, I'm here to teach what I know, and it's nice when folks in a friendly manner share their knowledge with me. So thank you for that, and for everybody else who's been posting supportive comments. Just can never get enough of that, and I do appreciate it. I am reading all the comments, even if I don't reply to them all. I am reading them. And yeah, that's it. We've got Windows 8 installed. It shows today Saturday, June 14th. It's got the wrong time, and today's not Saturday. So I'm going to have to set the date and time. I want to make sure the BIOS is set correctly. But what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and install the drivers. In fact, let's go ahead and start that right now. Let's get our drivers installed. Let's get Windows 8 back in there. And somewhere in this box, there's a couple of discs. We've got a DVD suite that came with the optical drive, which is probably just some trial software, which I'm not going to put on. Everything we need to watch DVDs should already be built into Windows 8. We shouldn't need anything on the disk that comes with the DVD reader-writer drive. We just want to use the disk that came with the motherboard. And we should see something happen here soon. I have to tell you, here we go. I use really fast computers all day long. So I just don't have the patience really to deal with this stuff. And not everybody's like me. Thank goodness, right? Especially for you. But my consideration is all about time is money. And so anytime I'm sitting here watching a cursor swirl around, and have you noticed that symbol they're using now? And it looks like a toilet flushing. It goes around and around like that. If you're in Australia, does it go the other way? It's a joke. It's just other side of the equator. Never mind. Okay, so we just rebooted from installing all the drivers, so everything should be good there. Here's what I'm going to do off camera. This is going to be the end of part 2. You can see the system functions. When you see me again in part 3, I will have updated all of the, well, this still may be installing drivers, but I'm going to go ahead and make sure that the BIOS has been updated, the wire management has been done as good as I can do it on this case. Put the side panels back. Maybe I'll leave the one side panel off so you can see what the wire management looks like. And I'm going to put the classic shell so I can have my start menu back on both machines. I'm going to remove all the trialware from the HP computer. We'll just use the built-in Windows Defender that comes with Windows 8 for antivirus, even though that's not good enough by itself. I don't want to bog the computer down with too much that may interfere with our performance scores. So that's when we're going to do, basically part 3 is going to be the actual comparison part to see how the system we built compares with the system that's pre-built. We built versus pre-built. That'll be part 3. So until then, that's enough for today. I hope it's been enough for you. It's been enough for me. I'll see you guys next time. Thanks again for watching. Again, if you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button. You'll be alerted by email anytime a new video is posted. Feel free to friend me on Facebook if you'd like to, but please remember, I don't offer any technical support or build advice except to my customers. It's just a matter of time. It's not because I don't like you or anything. There's just one of me. But I do post some things that you don't see here on YouTube that are there on the Facebook, and you're welcome to join me as my friend until Facebook tells me there's some point on Facebook where you get so many friends it won't let you have anymore and you have to change it over to a fan page. I'm trying to keep it from being a fan page. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. In the meantime, hit like if you like the video, or dislike if you don't like the video. That's fine too. It lets me know which videos I should be making and focusing on. I want to make sure that you guys are enjoying what I'm doing and that I'm not doing this all for nothing. Okay, well that's it for now. I've already said that before. Now I really mean it. And I better go before I start talking again. See you later. See you in part 3.